Hey, what's going on, guys? Coach Zach here. Want to welcome you. Thanks for popping in. This one's a little bit different today. I'm going to talk a little bit of programming philosophy and types of ways to do it. Hope you guys are doing good today, this afternoon, I guess. Happy hour tonight on Zoom. Okay, so Zoom call 6:30. Bring your booze, and we'll just kind of hang out. It'll be a good time. Last night was a really good time talking about Die Hard and some other movies. So I know Keith's got some topics and some subjects for you today to pop into. So happy hour tonight, 6:30 on Zoom. Should be a good time. Today, like I kind of started with, I want to talk squat programming. And it doesn't have to be, you can apply everything we're going to talk about to other strength movements. But I'm going to use squats because I think it's the easiest one to kind of talk about. And most people can identify with squats because everybody likes to have stronger legs, right? So I'm going to talk about the ways we can go about programming your reps and your time and all that stuff. I'm going to talk about maybe why a little bit, some other ways that we don't do it as often. And then we're actually going to go through a sample. I've kind of already written it out, but a sample one together of how to create like a 7-week program, which I'll show you. And then also at the end, we're going to squat a little bit. So I know some of you guys are squatting. If you have equipment at home, that is on the equipment WOD today. We're going to do something a little bit different. And I'm not going to go too heavy or anything like that. I'm just going to show you an example of how we might do it in a class setting. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to go over is what we're doing here is CrossFit, right? So CrossFit, by definition, constantly varied functional movement at high intensity. How does that apply to strength? Okay, well, it definitely can. If we're talking about just straight up a strength session, which on CrossFit.com, you see them program all the time, right? Constantly vary. Well, actually, we'll do a very second. The functional movement is a given. What we're doing is squatting, right? So that is a functional movement, probably the foundational functional movement, the most basic and important one we have in our arsenal, right? So functional movement, check mark, got that part done, okay? High intensity. This can apply to two things. It can apply to load, okay, your loading, and or your reps. So the most basic way to say it is high reps, low weight, low reps, high weight, or heavy weight, right? So load and reps is what we're referring to there in intensity. And then as far as varied goes, that is progressions. And there's different ways we can do it. So CrossFit, if you look on CrossFit.com, that's more of a kind of a more random one because it's 3 days on, 1 day off, and we're trying to cycle through everything. So CrossFit.com is the most in terms of strength programming, it's going to be more random. So like I wrote down right here, 5-5-3-3-1-1. That's actually kind of the way I like to write it. Is that kind of style. But what we've also done a lot, probably, so your Catalyst Athletics I wrote up here, Hatch programs, Glove Cycle, big in powerlifting too, not just for squatting, but for powerlifting. So that would be like your 5x5 1 week, your 5x3 the next week, and then you're maxing out or whatever, right? And there's different like ways you can take it. So I know like on Catalyst Athletics, if you look on that website, they've always had some programs are like 4 weeks, and some programs are like 16 weeks. It just depends on what you're going for, right? So the good thing about linear is it's just a line across, right? Hence the name linear. So you can make that as long or short as you need to make it for your goals. Okay. So we did a lot of that over the last like 6 months before we got, quarantined by the Ronas. Right? I think like July, August, we started with a snatch progression. Then we went into clean and jerk, deadlift after that, strict press, push press. We did it all over the last, kind of half a year. So that part of it should be really familiar. Okay. Another way we like to do it in CrossFit is EMOM, and it might not even be every single minute, but there's a time domain set to it. So like every 90 seconds, every 2 minutes, every 3 minutes, whatever. Okay. That can be sanctioned or not. So what I mean by that is it could say when you walk into the clock or to class, it says 8 sets every 90 seconds. We're doing 3 back squat or 4 back squat, whatever. That is one way. The other way is that you can take that EMOM thing and apply it up here. So that you have 5x5 that day. The goal weight that you want to get to. And you think it's going to take you about 2 minutes to recover. So let's say, hey, I'm going to do a set every 2.5 minutes. All right, you make that decision for yourself, and that number is going to be different for everybody. But hint, hint, this is why we start the clock in the class. It's not for random. It's not for us to have a timer on everybody, like we're babysitting and okay, now we're done. Okay, that is for you to lock in and kind of realize how much rest you need. So you get to know yourself better as an athlete and what your body needs and what your mind needs prior to each set. So that is the biggest reason why we would start a clock in classes, so that you can keep track of that rest time, right? And we can really treat it as recovery time. So I hope that makes sense, and that, that's something you might pick up if you didn't know otherwise, that you can take into class, or, once we get back, or now if you're going to start doing stuff. I'm not saying turn stuff into a workout, but it does help you stay fresh, especially if you come from CrossFit like me. Quick story. I did some, competitive weightlifting for a little bit concurrent with CrossFit. And I went to Oli Concepts, Danny Camargo, okay, really well-known coach here in Central Florida. And I was the only one in the gym who kept myself on a clock, and I was moving around and, jumping around. And for me, I probably took it a little bit extreme, but they were like, "What are you doing? Why are you rushing through this?" Because they weren't really on a clock. But me coming from that CrossFit background, for me, it was easier to stay sharp and stay loose and stay snappy with my lifts if I had some sort of plan on a clock and stayed moving, versus they were used to that more strength training background where they'll hit a set and then maybe 4, maybe 5, maybe 8 minutes later, they hit another one. So those of you that are used to that CrossFit packing everything into an hour, this is a really effective way to do it. Okay. Combining that linear progression style with sort of this EMOM every X amount of time on the clock. So that way you stay fresh, stay snappy. Right. So that's my spiel on that. Okay. I know when I try to program, even if I'm doing linear progression style, I keep that mindset of, okay, how would I do this if I were in class? Would I do this, do these sets of 2 every 2 minutes? Would I do these sets of 4 every 4 minutes? Stuff like that. Even within Waterside Elite, when we're programming or when we're doing workouts or strength workouts, I really try to pay attention to the clock. The further time you have in between, you can get social with it and talk and stuff. But if you're on the clock, you're on the clock. Okay. I know during these quarantine workouts, today is one of them. And then last week we did another one where it's every 30 seconds we're moving at a kind of a moderate percentage. And that gets really, really tough. So obviously the less rest time you have, no matter what the weight is, it's going to be harder. So that's another way we can talk about the constantly varied part of CrossFit as it comes to strength training, is varying up that rest time and see how your legs respond and your back responds and stuff like that. Okay. Want to go through an example of what that would look like, right? So I wrote it out here. I'm going to kind of have a paper cover on it, and then we'll just go through and explain. So this, if you've been in class with us, this is something that you definitely experienced some sort of. I went ahead and made this one 7 weeks so I could expand it a little bit and make it as detailed as possible. In class, we would limit this to 5-6 weeks tops, because people start to lose focus and passion for it. So, but for this purpose, I'm gonna run it to 7 weeks. Okay, and my marker wipes some off, so give me a second here. So week 1, pretty much universally across the board, no matter how long your linear progression lasts, you're gonna have a week 1 test. Okay. A test or assessment week. So we'll go ahead and make that week 1. That is where you are finding out what you got in the tank. Okay. So you can read that. Okay. Week 1 test and assessment week. Hey, I thought I could squat 315. Turns out I'm only good for 295 now. That's A-okay. I'm going to take that 295, maybe bump that up to around 300 and make that what I calculate my percentages off of. So when we say 70%, 65%, chances are if you're tuning in, to this video, you already know that. But that is the number you're basing it off of. Okay. Be realistic with that. So I always try to go 5 or 10 pounds above where I test at, because it kind of just mentally gives me the incentive to work a little bit heavier. But we want this to be, we're doing these following weeks for a reason, right? And so if my true 65%, or if my true 75% is what I'm doing for 65%, that doesn't make sense for me. I'm going to be fatigued, tired, have terrible form on my 65 when I should be using that opportunity to get better. So really stay as true as you can when we do those test weeks. Okay. So week number 2, okay, the first working week, we'll call it 6x6 at 60 to 65%. Okay. And then for 60, 65%, it's pretty lightweight. So if you want to start more with like an 8 to a 10 rep thing, that's pretty common for something like Smolov or any other weightlifting cycle. Actually, I think Smolov does 6, but not important. You can do a little bit more than 6, but we'll say for our purposes of programming here today, 65%, 6 sets of 6. And then for continuity purposes, we're going to keep all these at 6 sets. All right. Week number 3, second working week, 6 by 4 at 68 to 75%. So now we bumped up 5, 10, 15 pounds, depending on how heavy your test week was. And we're doing 4 reps instead of 6. Okay. So whereas the week before you get to rep 5, 6, you're starting to really feel it, really hurting. Yeah. You get to 3 and 4 here and you're like, okay, I'm done. Boom. Okay, so a little bit easier to manage mentally there, although that weight is heavier. Okay. So same thing. We've bumped up now the percentage. We've decreased the amount of reps we're doing. So 6 sets of 3 on week 4 at 78 to 83%. So now we're coming out of, I would consider anything less than 80 light or moderate. And then once you get above 80, that's kind of like moderate to heavy, right? So 6 by 3 at 78 to 83%. Week 5 out of 7, it's kind of hard to see on my board. It's got a hole in it, but 6 sets of 2 at 85 to 90%. So now we're getting hefty with it. The 85s should be like the first 3 sets, 90-ish, 88 to 90% for those last 3 sets of 2. But that is where we're starting to consider it pretty heavy. You might be strapping on the belt, wearing the knee sleeves, wearing the lifting shoes, whatever. That's where the accessories start to come into play. Okay. Week 6, we're going to break up what we're doing now. So the first 3 sets are going to be doubles, just like they were the week before. So 3 sets of 2 at 93%-ish. And then 3 singles, 3 heavy singles at 95%, up to 95%. So now we're pretty heavy. It should be close to a 1 rep max. You might find if you were somebody that bumped up what you tested at. So say again, use that 295 example. If you went off of 300 this whole time, you might be back to 295 by the time you get to this 95%, and it might feel easy. You might smoke it. Hopefully, that's the whole point behind these weeks. So that way you're gearing yourself up for a huge week on week 7, which is test week, right? And then this is the week where we're laying it all out there. You're going to do, hopefully, you've been very familiar with these percentages as you've been working up and warming up through these last 6 weeks. So you're going to do, you're at 65, 70%, you're going to be doing sets of 5 or 6. Okay. And then as you get to 75%, you're down to 4s and 3s and 2s as you go up into 80s and so on and so forth. As you build up, I would take 20, 22 minutes if you're by yourself doing this kind of thing. For class, we probably have to shorten that more to like 17, 18 minutes just because we have other stuff to do that day. But we're going to take a little bit longer for this session, number 7, because you have to build all the way up again than we would for the rest of these, right? So you are testing this. Once you get to about 93, 95, I would do like a set at 97, 98, and then go for like 101, 102, 103%. So that would be like, if I tested at 295, I'm going for 300 or 305, right? If you improve more than that, then that's fantastic. That means progression work. But that is a very simple, basic, tried and true way to improve those strength movements. Okay, and I use the back squat as an example there. Okay, so hopefully that made sense. Hopefully that was solid explanation. If you have questions on that, hit me up, of course. What we're going to do now, if you do want to squat a little bit, okay, stay on with me. I'm going to do an example of a 5 by 3. So this is a little bit different. This is more like what we do on a regular class day when we're not in the middle of progression, but we do want to get some squats in. Okay, 5 sets of 3, and we're going to go every 90 seconds. So this is back to that EMOM style I was talking about. Every 90 seconds, that clock will beep. We will hit a set of 3, hopefully increasing our weight each rep. Make sense? I'm not going to go too heavy because we're going to do a full warm-up and squat and stuff like that. This is a more informational session, so I'll keep it pretty light, but you guys get it, right? So if you want to squat with me, great. Get that bar out. Get ready to go. 5 by 3 every 90 seconds. Let's do a warm-up set of 8 with the empty barbell. Then you can add weight. Okay. Feet shoulder width apart. Knees back and out over the toes. Hips back and down. Boom. All right, I'll add a little bit of weight, and then we'll start our clock. Remember, we are doing 3 reps every set, 5 sets of 3. I'll set up our every 90 seconds clock. All right. This thing's being slow. All right, EMOM every 1:30, 4, 5. So 7-minute, 30-second session here. Here we go. 10 seconds till first set, 3 reps. Cool. Add a little bit of weight. Let those legs recover. We'll go for set 2. Whew. I know some of y'all out there, you're always like, man, that's too much time. That's too much time between those early sets. But then by the time you get to set number, say we're doing more than 5, say we're doing like 8 or 10, by the time you get to like 5, 6, 7, you're wading deep into that next set before you start, right? So like instead of going right on the beep, you'll rest a minute because you try to go too fast at the beginning or pack too much in the beginning. So take your time. That rest is in there for a reason, is to let that body recover, okay? There comes a time for the working out or the WOD where there's no rest, okay? That's not the purpose here. The purpose is to get stronger, okay? Not get out of breath necessarily. Okay? Here we go, 10 seconds. Go. Slap some 10s on here. Woo. Thirty seconds. All right, 10 seconds back into the next one. Dick's Sporting Goods 10s out here. They've been very helpful during this time. Two sets left. All right. set number 4, setting up. So now we're a little bit heavier, right? Hopefully we're adding a little bit of weight. And a couple more here at the end. Now, obviously, when we do something like this, a 5x3, right? Those are all working sets. I'm giving you an example here, but if we were in class and I was doing this, I would not have started with a light weight like I did at the beginning. That would consider that more of a warm-up weight, but right for the purposes of what we were doing, I jumped right into it, okay? So just know when you do a 5x5 or 5x3 or something in class, that window of your reps, of your percentages should be a little bit tighter, right? So more like, I have a range set here on the percentages versus the way I'm doing it right now. But again, just doing it for example, more on the time clock than anything else. Okay. I don't even know if you could see those squats I was doing. Maybe not. Doesn't matter. 10 seconds. Last set. Here we go. Woo. All right. So hopefully a lot of that makes sense to you guys. Again, linear progression is one you're going to see the most because it's the easiest to see tangible gains over time on. So a lot of the reason people would, keep coming to CrossFit is to see gains, right? They want to see improvement. That's what we're all doing here. So linear progression is a great way to do that. That's why things like Catalyst, Hatch, Smolov, that's why they work. And why we try to do some of that too with the way we do strength gains as well. And again, all this stuff can be applied to different strength movements. This is the tried and true method that they've used in powerlifting forever. Probably Greeks, Hercules, they probably did the same thing, right? At least the same concept. Improve over time. You start here, you build with bigger reps, and then for one, you can do more, right? I like to do that, but to apply just reviewing now, I like to apply the clock. So like we just did, I went every 90 seconds, but you can also do that for every 2 minutes, every 2.5, depending on the weight that you're going for and the amount of reps that you're doing, okay? Obviously, if you do a 20 rep max and you got to do it twice, you're going to rest probably at least 4 or 5 minutes in between and not go every minute on the minute. That wouldn't make sense, okay? Varying your load and your reps, just keep that in mind as you're programming. Don't do the same thing all the time. Make it harder, make it easier in terms of how many you're doing, but adjust the percentages of your 1 rep max accordingly, okay? If you have any questions on that or ideas, suggestions that you'd like to share with me, hey, I've tried this in the past, it's worked for me, whatever, hit me up with it. Instagram, Facebook, or my number, type it in right here if you're watching. Other than that, hope you guys have a great day. I'm back on the no equipment workout at 5 p.m. And then tonight at 6:30, happy hour. I need to go get a couple brewskis myself so I can participate in that and have a good time. But thank you for hanging out with me for this quick little lesson, and apply it as you will. Thanks for hanging out. See you guys.